Hey guys, Phil Baumhart here. So for today's video, I got a little book review for you. The Fur Trade Cutlery Sketchbook by James Hanson. So as you can see, this is just a thin little book. You might think it's a kid's book, but it's actually got a lot of great tidbits of information, and it kind of goes over a lot of basics for knives from antiquity. So if you're trying to make historically accurate knives, this is actually a really great reference and a great jumping off point for your own creations. So I'm just going to show you what's inside, so if you want to get it for yourself, you'll know what you're purchasing basically. But I bought this off the Museum of the Fur Trade website. I'm going to have a link in the description of the video, but this thing was only about $8, so well worth the cost. So there's really no reason not to get it if you're interested in the period and all that. They've got a good number of books on there, so you can buy this and a few others and make it worth the cost of shipping. But anyways, let me show you what's inside. So on the front cover, we've got the Native American depiction of a knife versus tomahawk fight. This guy's getting cut on his offhand. So this is kind of neat in and of itself, but we open it up, and it's all in this handwritten, hand-sketched style. So it opens up with a brief history of the Iron Age and how iron and steel are made. Goes over a nice glossary of terms for specifically for the types of iron and steel that were used in these period knives. So, you know, wrought iron, shear steel, goes over some of the nomenclature. So I'm always looking for actual photos of historic knives rather than just people's reproduction. So what's nice here is that all these knives, you know, are actual knives that existed in antiquity. So, and he doesn't always tell where they came from, but it's nice to have these patterns and designs, you know, laid out for me at my fingertips. One of the things I want to try to make is an early folding knife. So specifically, I want to try to do the kind of Spanish Navaja style with the kind of ratcheting locking systems. What's nice about this book is that even though there aren't any actual photographs, what you do get is these sort of you know, drawings. So he's able to add detail that, you know, and angles that you might not be able to get from a photo, and you know, he's able to show you the kind of the cross section. So it's kind of a trade-off. I prefer to see actual photographs, but the drawing is a nice presentation, and it covers a lot of information in here. So he's got a hand-forged butcher knife drawn here, and so calling this a roach belly or roach bury. So interesting origin of that name. But you got the cartouche knife, which is a very common knife. I guess this originated from kind of a medieval eating knife. This is a common knife of the period. One that you don't really see done too much because it's not as glamorous as like a Bowie knife. You got your scalping knives. So the antler-handled mountain man knife that I made, I kind of consider to be a scalping knife because it's kind of purpose-built for fighting. But a scalping knife really just was a large skinning knife. And so as these were being made as trade knives, they were marketed as scalpers, just for that kind of cool factor, I think. So here's a rip knife or ripping knife, which was used by the buffalo hunters to open up the carcass prior to skinning. Basically a pig sticker. I believe Ontario Knives still makes a knife that looks just like this. But something interesting is that there's a Green River skinning knife. So these skinning knives were actually copies of ones made by an American company called the Green River Works Company. So they marked theirs with Green River as a way to kind of piggyback on that company's success. And then it goes into the dag, the Native American dag knife. So this was another type of trade knife that originated from a bayonet blade that was traded to the Native Americans, and they would haft their own handles on there. You can see the pin construction in accordance with how the raw blades came to them. So this is a type of knife that I want to try making one of these days. This is pretty neat. You can put it on a spear too, so actually would be kind of a cool survival knife design, something that you could remove the handles and put it onto a survival spear. But it's got a little bit on the Scottish dirk, one of my personal favorites. Goes over kind of the sheath styling, so something I want to make for, you know, I've made a large Scottish dirk out of a farrier's rasp. I have yet to make a sheath for it, partially because I was trying to do research on the type of historically accurate sheath that might be around that I could actually make. So that's kind of cool, and with the buy knife and fork that go into the scabbard. Nice detail on the carvings as well. We got the Bowie knife, the ubiquitous Bowie. A lot of legend and lore regarding this, so he doesn't get into too much detail with it, but he touches on it enough. Kind of getting into the what I would call modern style of pocket knives and where they originate from. Got the farrier's knife, crooked knife. The buffalo or chief's knife, I would call this a Hudson Bay pattern of knife. So I didn't know it was called a buffalo knife, but here it is here. So again, made in Sheffield, England. It gives you a nice X-ray view of the of what the handles looked like. So kind of a full tang, but totally encompassed by the handle scales. And then also, you know, a different view of the knife that you normally don't get to see is that the tang actually tapers. So that's a nice detail. So get you some of the Spanish and southwestern knives. So the Spaniards are known as a blade culture. You know, in the 1700s, they were famous for the rapier and dagger fighting, and it's neat to me that their style of knives filtered into the Americas, obviously with their colonies there, and so some of the the knives of the 1800s and knives we have today are influenced by the Spaniards. So something called a Belle Duke. I had not heard of this type of knife before, so neat to see that. And these are English copies of Spanish-style knives, which are made for trade with Mexico. So again, we have Sheffield, England, making copies of popular native knives. The Russian knives, I thought this was interesting. So obviously you had the Yukon Gold Rush, and there's a good number of Russians that came through Alaska. So you get these Russian butcher knives. When I was making the knife for Jack London's Son of the Wolf for that film, I made a knife that kind of looked like a Hudson Bay Company knife. In the short story, it's described as the character of the bear fighting with a Russian knife. So had I known about this book, I would have made a knife to look more like that. But and this is another neat dagger, the Yukon dagger. It's got a asymmetrical cross section, and these were originally cold forged out of copper, which is what this one was here. And this bottom one was repurposed from an old file, and he kind of goes into how that was. So this is a knife that I want to try to make one of these days. I think that'd be a cool build. So the backstory on this knife is kind of neat. There was a blacksmith who was shipwrecked in the Pacific Northwest, and he was taken in by an Indian tribe, and they basically had him make them these double-ended daggers. That's about it. But that's all I got for you guys today. So as always, thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and until next time, be more Viking.